Good afternoon. Welcome to Restart Michigan with KPMG, hands-on restructuring, in-plant COGS reductions, including behavioral corrections. My name is Tabitha Mensch, and I am an engagement manager with the Detroit Regional Chamber in Machado. Thank you for joining this session this afternoon. The Chamber launched this series of webinars to help businesses across the state prepare to restart operations and return to work. I would like to thank our guest speaker, KPMG, for volunteering their time to share their expertise. Before we get started, I wanted to make you all aware that as participants, you are on mute, but you do have the option to submit questions to KPMG through the GoToWebinar control panel at any time during this presentation. Our speakers will try to address as many of the questions as time will allow. I will now turn the webinar over to Keith Updike from KPMG. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabitha, and thank you to the Chamber in Machado for this opportunity. Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you're all safe and sound. Welcome to Hands-on Restructuring, where we'll address in-plant cost of goods sold reductions and suggest certain behavioral corrections to your current operating system. This is the third in the series of 3 webinars on the financial and operational restructuring efforts that mostly will be required as we begin the path to the new normal. As Tabitha mentioned, I'm Keith Updike, a managing director and co-lead of KPMG's manufacturing performance improvement activity within our Operations Center of Excellence. So first, let me recap the first 2 sessions. As you heard my colleagues say, the math gets tough. Volume reductions, fixed purchase prices, high manufacturing costs. Therefore, there needs to be a focus on cost cutting and short-term cash conservations, focus on detailed cash flow and liquidity forecasting. And as you heard Doug Olander, my colleague, said, it's time to raise the bar. But really, what does that mean? And how do we do that? First of all, you need to understand manufacturing. You know, if this was a different type of forum, I'd ask you to show me by a raise of hands how many people have worked on the plant floor or even walked the plant floor, because having an understanding of the plant floor is critical in this post-COVID environment. So let me share with you what 36 years of manufacturing experience has taught me as we kind of self-reflect on manufacturing today. You know, let's look at the plant floor management experience. Are these seasoned individuals? Are they new? Is it a good mix between the two? Because what we find in manufacturing is having that experience is a critical component of being able to deal with these variabilities that will be coming their way. You know, increased complexity and variability. What else is coming? I mean, how many new launches will you be undertaking? You know, will you be experiencing or continue to experience high turnover? Variability is really the curse to manufacturing, right? It's change. And how well you deal with change is an important element of how well you will be able to respond to this new normal. All right, the manufacturing fundamentals, still tried and true. These are the standard work, the preventive maintenance, those fundamentals that have been around manufacturing for a very long time. Most places have them in place, but we'll talk later about how a lot of places don't have the discipline necessary associated with those fundamentals. You know, volume impacts, your product lines. Are your products in vehicles that sell and will be growing volume, or are you products in vehicles that will not be selling and maybe struggle to deal with the consumer? It's the SUV versus car discussion, right? It's a lot of those things that may be future impacts that we don't know what the COVID impact will be on sales, but being able to deal with whatever transpires is going to be a critical component. All right. The manufacturing culture. What do I mean by this? Really, it's the discipline and the accountability. You know, are you a good running plant or aren't you a good running plant? You know, Do you have a lot of quality issues? Do you have a lot of delivery issues? Do you have a lot of those concerns from a customer standpoint? And if so, you got a time to self-reflect on that manufacturing culture. And then you get to COVID-19. It's kind of like, who knows? Who knows what the impact is going to be? And regardless of the impact, manufacturing is going to have to deal with that variability. So how do we deal with that variability associated with COVID-19? That's what we're here to talk about. Hands-on restructuring is more of a boots on the ground, fundamental blocking and tackling structured approach to addressing the challenges that will be facing manufacturing. So where do you want to focus? I mean, when we talk about manufacturing, when we talk about focusing on the floor, what really are we looking at? Well, first and foremost, it's really about the people. I mean, the people are the greatest asset. It's a well-known saying when you ask companies, well, what's your greatest asset? Well, it's our people. But when you really understand what the company does as it relates to their people, you got to question, is it really their greatest asset, or are they treating it as their greatest asset? Do their supervisors have the proper tools? You know, is the culture one to where they truly are, and we'll talk about safety here in a second, truly are focused on the people? Are the people involved? You know, are they engaged? Are the communications going to the people? So those kinds of aspects of the people is really what makes the people feel part of the organization. So that safety, critical component now, even more now. The concern we would have as you focus in on safety is, if the organization didn't wear safety glasses before, you should be concerned that in the new normal with new safety precautions, that they'll be wearing their face masks and doing their cleaning and those kinds of activities at the discipline and at the rate that you can't let up on this, right? So safety is a number one priority. We need to re-examine all the safety protocols, ensure they're meeting what's considered to be appropriate safety under the COVID world here, and then ensure that you have the discipline and the monitoring in place. Back to the fundamentals. Again, another reference to the blocking and tackling. You know, you can walk into manufacturing operations and see operating systems posted in great big posters on the wall. But when you get down to the manufacturing floor, you start to see that breakdown, that deterioration in the fundamentals and the disciplines associated with it. Metric management, but this is operational metric management. So this isn't the metrics that Phil and Florian are talking about. This is in addition to, this is how do your plant floor measure themselves? How are you measuring your effectiveness? A lot of times we go into operations when we review them and you see OEE really low, right? Efficiencies are low, quality, scrap, throughput, all those things are well below target levels. It's time to focus in on that area as well. The manufacturing culture, we referenced that already. It's really kind of, are you a well-oiled machine? If you're not a well-oiled machine, we got to find ways to get to be a well-oiled machine. And then, is it institutionalized? You know, do we audit? Do we monitor? Do people understand? Do we communicate? Those are key aspects of the focus areas when you talk about the manufacturing floor, right? And then you get to the focus, but it's not just the focus of the people, it's the focus of leadership. You know, plant managers, do they walk the floor? Are they in all-day meetings every day? Being an all-day meeting doesn't show that the floor is the priority focus, right? So you got to make sure that the proper folks and the proper levels up and down the chain are engaged on the plant floor. And then we walk the talk, and that's everybody in the organization. It's hard to preach housekeeping on the plant floor when you go to somebody's office and it's trashed, right? Because it sends a bad message. Everybody's got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to understand what the objectives are, what the targets are, and everybody's got to stay focused on it and stay true to it. So let me help you diagnose the problem a little further. You know, these are examples. These are examples that we see every day, right? We're involved in supporting underperforming plants as what we do day to day, Doug and I in our group at KPMG. This is just a representative sample of the kinds of things that you see on a day-to-day basis when you go into underperforming plants. And now these underperforming plants are going to be challenged even further because of the variabilities that we've already discussed with volumes, with COVID, with those kinds of things. So your housekeeping, it's always the first and easiest way to tell you whether or not you got discipline. You know, and it's not just housekeeping on the floor as we reference, it's housekeeping in the offices. If you have discipline with housekeeping, chances are you have discipline with safety, discipline with quality. If you don't have those disciplines in housekeeping, chances are you're probably a little loose on the other procedures as well. You know, do you feel like every day is a firefight? If every day is a firefight, then it's a clear sign that you're out of control. Right? The environment is managing you and you're not managing the environment. You know, referencing again back to the PP, it'll be such a critical component moving forward. It was always a critical component. It will now be increased because there's more PPE requirements and more social distancing requirements. The organization needs to take it. If you write a policy and a procedure, it's meant to be followed. It's not meant to be a guideline. Shift change. Always a good one, right? Is it sharp, or do you think that you lose time with people walking in, people walking out, machines don't start up right away? Those kinds of lack of discipline type of indicators, and I won't go through them all, that you see on the list are critical when it comes to really that self-reflection of, do I have a problem? When you look at your scrap and quality issues, are there more self-inflicted items, you know, scratches and things like that that we cause because we don't follow the process control plan that we have, right? So these are more just kind of like a chance to self-reflect and self-diagnose yourself to say, yeah, that kind of sounds like me. And if it sounds like you, then it's time to get serious about it, right? All of these are within your control. All of these are correctable items, and all of these things can be corrected quickly. It's a matter of getting everybody on the same page. So let's talk about that. Raise the bar, right? So how do we do that? You know, this is really kind of the money slide here. This is more of the how-to than anything else, right? So this is about improving efficiency, effectiveness, and reducing costs. The first thing, you got to support the people, you got to involve the people, you got to drive ownership, you got to ensure that the supervisors have the tools to do the job. We spend a lot of time training operators when it comes to putting, you know, the screw into the hole, that kind of, you know, functional process type of training. But when it comes to how to involve people, how to communicate with people, how to engage people, those kinds of skill sets that, back to the earlier discussion about the experienced type of supervisor knows how to do that, but some of the inexperienced supervisors don't. We need to make sure there's somebody mentoring, coaching, and teaching these individuals, because if people are truly your greatest asset, and they are, you have to make sure everyone has what they need to be successful. Critical. Communicate and raise expectations. Track metrics and raise urgency. You got to get everybody on the same page, right? There's nothing worse than not having everybody on the same page. You will not go as fast as you need to go, and you will not go as deep as you need to go. So it's just critical that people all understand, what really are we trying to accomplish here? You know, what are the goals? Do I know how I did today? Do I even know what good looks like? Having unclear expectations will give you poor performance. Having clear expectations will get everybody on the same page and be able to cause you to raise the bar. Ensure the fundamentals and conformance to the process. You know, again, the Toyota production system and all the variations that every company has adopted to make it their own is widely communicated. There's a great understanding of what those principles and practices are. The problem with that is it's not the understanding in most cases of the fundamentals, it's the lack of execution of those fundamentals. So just having standard work posted at all the operator stations is a fundamental, but having the discipline and to ensure that the operators are following that work, regardless of first shift, second shift, or third shift, is the difficult part of managing and maintaining the production system. And without that, you have no production system. We can give you examples upon examples where third shift ran better per se, or were more efficient than first shift and second shift, or first shift and second shift were efficient and third shift wasn't. And it breaks down to the fact that management, leadership, the people weren't all on the same page. They didn't understand the targets, and there wasn't this discipline associated with conformance to process. We see it day in and day out, which leads me to the higher level of discipline, accountability, and behavior. You're going to be facing a new normal. You've heard that same over and over and over again, right? So therefore, your expectations have to be higher. If you go into new manufactured normal world with the same expectations that you had, then you're probably not going to be able to handle the variability that's coming your way. If you go in there self-reflecting, find out where aren't we good, put the strategy and plans in place to be better at that, communicate those expectations, ensure the discipline and accountability are associated with those behaviors that are in place, you're going to have more success. Which leads me to the fifth point: reduce variability, waste, and cost. You know where the 7 wastes are, you know how to find those wastes, but do you have the plan in place to go do something about it? You know, that gets into the continuous improvement, the problem solving, the proactive approach. Are we a firefighting organization? Or are we an organization that looks already to, hey, where can something go wrong? If you're looking at where can something go wrong, then you're becoming more of a proactive organization. We talk about that a lot of times when we deal with FEMAs, you know, the failure mode analysis process. A lot of it is focused on the process, but we're not really thinking about what about the people failure, because the people are just as important part of that process. And what do I mean? What happens if I have high absenteeism? What are the protective measures that I put in because I will have that variability? Just an example of how you have to start thinking about what could go wrong and ensure that your process and strategy is in place to deal with those things before they occur. It shouldn't just be, hey, I got another quality issue, I'm going to go react. The issue truly is, hey, what can I do to ensure that this stuff doesn't happen again? Those are the key elements of how to raise the bar. This is just an example, and it's a real life example, right? And it's an example right out of our playbook, if you will, to where going into, this was a tier 1 auto supplier. They were struggling meeting quality and throughput demands for an OEM. They've been on their concern list of the OEM for over a year. When we were involved, we again went to the plant floor. We talked to the people. We understood what the concerns were. We made sure they understood the importance of following procedures and processes. We ensured that the process control places and cycle times and things were in place. And just by that fundamental blocking and tackling, communication, awareness, discipline, accountability type of steps, you can see what you did on the performance improvement side. Significant improvement in a very short period of time by just getting people on the. This is the kind of stuff from a blocking and tackling when you talk about what am I going to do, knowing all these variabilities and more variability are coming my way. what do I got to do? I got to go to the floor. I got to raise the bar. I got to deal with those issues once and for all and make sure that I become a well-running place. That's really the content. You know, that's kind of the message that I had in plan. I would like to invite Doug and Florian back into this conversation because they were the speakers in session 1 and session 2 to address any questions wrapping up this 3-session activity here. So right now, we'll take any questions. I got one here for Doug. Doug, are you there?
I'm here, Keith. Yeah.
All right, I got a couple questions for you I'd like to ask. First question, can you talk about the importance of manufacturing fundamentals?
I can, but I think you've just talked about it at great length. Look, I think you hit on a term called basic blocking and tackling, right? And Keith, I think you alluded to it. We go into a lot of plants where they want to run a trick play, but they're not blocking and tackling. The fundamentals are easy, right? It's do what you said you're going to do. You all have a quality management system. You all have a QS or TS or now ITAS certification that outlines what you said you're going to do. You have operator standard work. You have leader standard work. It's doing what you say you're going to do in terms of standard work. It's finding the right rhythm for your plant so that your leader and operator standards and the cadence of their activities in terms of addressing the process in a hands-on way are in place. It's focusing on the metrics so that you're winning each hour so that you can win the shift. And it's the basic process disciplines that are defined in your own standards that are the fundamentals that, when executed, give you a high performance result.
Thank you, Doug.
I hope that answered your question.
So do I. I do have one more for you. What will be the impact of COVID on the manufacturing floor?
Yeah, well, I think again, during the course of your discussion, you mentioned it, right? I mean, the biggest impact is there's going to be a necessary amplification and demonstration that people truly are our most important asset in manufacturing. And in order to demonstrate that, we're going to have the localized employee health and safety systems work and be focused on like they've never been worked and focused on before. We'll be introducing a good deal of PPE. We'll be doing social distancing, and we'll have new processes in place that have to be absolutely inviolate in what we do. But as a result of caring for our people, we're also going to create a higher cost, less efficient environment. The best we can hope for is neutral, but in most cases, we're going to see some degradation in the process efficiency, which means we have to go back to our manufacturing fundamentals. As you said early on, we have to raise the bar so that we can maximize the process potential as it sets, but also use our manufacturing metrics to highly leverage the areas where we can most rapidly change the processes back towards an equilibrium position, balancing first employee safety and then the maximized efficiency that we can get out and minimize any cost impacts that we take as a result of reacting to the COVID virus.
Thank you, Doug. Wholeheartedly agree. Florian, I have a couple here for you. Are you on? Florian?
Okay, I'm unmuted now. I think I was unmuted before. Sorry.
Well, that could be the first question. Are you not on mute? The next question for you, Florian, or the question that came across was, you've talked about various initiatives, operational and financial. How are you tracking and creating accountability if you have multiple incentives at the same time, or initiatives at the same time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So maybe let me tackle it this way. So what we're talking, to a lot of clients about is the concept of control tower. So depending on the organization and kind of the size of the organization as well, we're talking either about one control tower on top, or multiple layers of control towers. You can even call those COVID, task forces. So those would be, for example, if you have operation improvements, if you have overhead restructuring, if you have supplier risk, each one of those areas could have one control tower and then another one a level above, basically supervising all of those. But the most important thing is, essentially, and the purpose of those is to have an overview, a tracking of what's going on, and facilitating, that you can streamline processes and make these things easier. And we've worked with clients to either help them set up with internal resources, and even help them with providing the manpower and the expertise for those control towers. Yeah.
Thanks, Florian. Interesting. Got one more for you here. Let's say we manage to restart and are operating in the new environment. What are some of the things that we need to look out for from a liquidity perspective going forward?
Okay, so I see this. Yeah. So once we restart, we are in the new normal, right? So I think that's two things that are going to be important. First of all, as we stressed before, visibility, right? So the 13-week cash flow forecast remains the vital tool. It's important to track, especially deferred payments, capex that you didn't spend. Maybe you cut a deal regarding your borrowing base, and that's gonna come back. Either you're gonna increase your reserve again, or you skip the measurement. So you really want to be aware of what you're facing in the weeks and months to come. So it's very important to have that visibility. And secondly, I think another important point would be to have your new normal cost base. So given we are entering a period of lower volumes possibly and high inefficiencies, are you going to keep on burning cash for the foreseeable future, or how can you make necessary adjustments and cost cuts that will help you stop that cash burn? So I think those two would be the things that I'd be looking for.
Good, excellent. Thank you, Florian. Doug, do you see any more questions out there?
Yeah, actually, Keith, you're not going to get away scot-free either. So there are a couple that maybe I'll direct your way. You talked about changing culture. Can you expand on how you do that?
Yeah, obviously, the first and foremost, you gotta want to change, right? There's a lot of folks. It's no different than an exercise program or some of these other types of programs that you got to commit to. If you don't commit to, or if you just want to go through the motions, you might as well not waste your time, because it's not going to work. So you got to commit yourself. After your self-reflection, as we referenced, if you say to yourself, you know what, we're not as good as we need or want to be, that's the first step. The second step is not very far from that, which is we got to get everybody on the same page. So what are the expectations of the organization? And that's everything from, when to report to work, to, how do I deal if I got a quality problem, or what happens, if my machine stops. It's all those aspects when it comes to communicating and setting expectations, because what's transpired over, this time, especially in this time pre-virus, where unemployment was so low, absenteeism and turnover were very high. So the poor plant manager, supervisor on the floor is constantly dealing with variability, right? People are not coming to work, absenteeism, losing, going somewhere else to work, a high turnover situation. So our training process on the plant floor tends to be focused on just how to do this job, how to trim it, how to put the hole in it, how to assemble it, how to do those kinds of things. But when it comes to, what's the escalation process? When it comes to, who do you go to if you got a question? When it goes to those kinds of, how do I really operate in this environment? You got to set those expectations. And in some cases, you're resetting those expectations because you weren't real good at enforcing them. So like safety glasses, recently in a plant, safety glasses, signs up, everything's there. People walking around on the plant floor with safety glasses on their head, but not on their face. So you've already proven, because you don't ensure that people understand the importance of wearing safety glasses, or there's no accountability associated with people wearing safety glasses, that you've sent a message that safety glasses aren't important, no different than housekeeping. If you don't care about the housekeeping, then the people are going to assume that housekeeping isn't important. So you have to reset those expectations to ensure that everybody's on the same page. And then you have to build this culture of continuous improvement, problem solving, and monitoring and ensuring that people are following the rules. Because it's that high discipline, high accountability, increased behaviors that are going to get that culture to change. The beauty is, if you believe that 70% of the people will do what you ask them to do, you just got to ask them to do it, then that's 70% of the people. So then it's a matter of more of the management of the process and ensuring that the remaining 30% understand the importance of the process. You get everybody on the same page, the culture flips, and it flips quick.
That's a great recipe, and appreciate also the benefit of your experience in that. We do have one other question before we close up, and it's a how-to question as well. You had mentioned reactive versus proactive as you work through the discussion today. What does it take for someone to become more proactive?
Yeah, again, it's going to sound a little theoretical, but I'll try to build some practical into that too. But you got to want to be more proactive. So what does that mean, right? That means you're trying to get and solve a problem or predict a problem and address a problem before it happens. So we get into a lot of those situations where people never thought about it, right? We had a recent one where it was a new product launch situation, but the material handling system failed and they were unable to get stock out. And because they couldn't get stock out of the material handling system, then they weren't able to ship parts to their customer, and you can kind of get the picture there, right? But when you start going in and digging down to say, okay, what was the action associated with if this thing goes down, you find out nobody ever thought of it, right? Nobody ever assumed that they would have equipment failure, right? They assumed on the line, that, hey, these are the failure modes associated with the line, but all the things that feed the line, they never looked at. So it's just really start to take a look at, back to that self-reflection comment, Doug, you got to take a look at, and you say to yourself, okay, what could go wrong, right? And if it can go wrong, what am I going to do about it before it goes wrong? And the same thing too with absenteeism, turnover, and all that other stuff. You have new people coming into this. So the whole point is, what am I going to do with that? Am I just going to hurry up and try to, hey, this is all you got to do for this job? There's got to be more effort put into mentoring, coaching, and teaching, not only management and floor management and supervision and leads, but there's also got to be a better training process, because the job is not just, tab and slot. The job is how to work as a team and be involved and be part of the solution and drive continuous improvement and drive reactions and all that stuff. That's so much more than what we currently arm our supervision with and our leads with and our people with. When we teach them, we just show them where the bathroom is and tell them that, hey, this is what you got to do to make the part. But everything else, they learn on their own. The problem is with all that learning on their own, people learn bad habits, and we don't want those bad habits. So we have to give more thought into what can go wrong and put the process in place to prevent those things to go wrong before they go wrong.
Fantastic. Thanks, Keith. And right now, I think we're at the end of our questions. So back to you.
All right. Well, again, thank you for everybody. Thank you for all 3 sessions. And Tabitha, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. This is Tabitha Mensch again from the Chamber to wrap up today's discussion. Thank you to the whole KPMG team. To all the participants, thank you for your time today. You will soon receive an email from me with a link to today's discussion in case you want to review any of the information shared. The email will also include any materials today. Please visit our website at detroitchamber.com/COVID-19 for upcoming schedules for Restart Michigan webinars and our teletown halls, as well as more valuable information and data to help your business return to work. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.